Hi everybody, my name is Dennis and welcome back to another album review. Today we're reviewing the latest album from R&B singer-songwriter Kehlani, entitled While We Wait. Now, I'm honestly not all that familiar with a lot of the songs in Kehlani's discography. I mostly just know about her from some of the features she's done. For example, I enjoyed her on the track she did with Super Duper Kyle on his latest record. So I went into this with a bit of an open mind, but not really knowing what to expect exactly, other than it would be some pop R&B. And I find myself enjoying a lot of singer-songwriters with a very similar style. Like, take for example Janelle Monáe, or even LMI somewhat, or SZA, who all bring something interesting and new to a very familiar genre. Especially SZA and Janelle Monáe are very ambitious with the things that they do, and I've enjoyed a lot of their work very well. But While We Wait is the complete opposite of all this. It's very uninspired, it's very boring, it's very uninteresting. A lot of her vocal deliveries I've heard multiple times over from other artists who've done it in a much more emotional and interesting way. The songwriting on here is bland and uninteresting and oftentimes even unhealthy, which I'll get into later. And a lot of the production just leaves me just so tired and wanting to fall asleep, and not because it's soothing or relaxing, but just because it's so frustratingly boring. The instrumentals are very stripped back, and there's nothing wrong with having a stripped back instrumental, but it needs to be done in a way that's interesting or intriguing or does something to still grab your attention while still allowing you to appreciate the simplicity of it. But this just feels lazy, underdone, and really disappointing. Take for example the song RPG featuring Black. And if you saw my review on the Black album, you know how I feel about him. And this just feels like another boring cut from that album. It's uninteresting, forgettable, and really underwritten. And even though I understand that it's saying like, oh, I feel like my love life is just a video game where I'm just being controlled, I don't have any say in what's going on, this idea is never expanded upon. It's never done anything. Nothing interesting is done with it. It's done in a very simplistic, shallow, uninteresting way where I understand what you're saying, but I don't understand why you're saying it. I don't feel what you're obviously feeling with the song. I don't find it interesting. I don't find it well thought out, and it just comes across as really short-sighted. And on top of that, some of the songwriting, especially in the earlier cuts on the album, just feel really emotionally manipulative, and it's really concerning, if anything. I mean, take the song Footsteps, where I think the idea of the song is to be like, oh, I know that neither of us are ready for this relationship, but I'm glad we still tried, but let's leave for right now, and maybe when we get more mature we can come back together, which I think is an overall good message. But it oftentimes just comes across as you can't deal with who I am, so you can come find me whenever you're ready. And it's really disheartening to see the message slandered like that, because I don't think that was the intention. I really don't think that was the intention behind it. But when she says stuff like she's habitually a B, and it just comes across as like, well, that's just who I am, and you can't change that, and it doesn't matter if that's a personal flaw, it doesn't matter if that's something I can improve on. That's just something you're going to have to deal with, and I'll leave the footsteps in the mud so you can find me whenever you're ready for this. And to me, that's just kind of emotionally manipulative, and it seems like she's saying almost like, you're the one who's in the wrong. Everything is your fault. And there was nothing wrong with her, which is a very poor mindset to have in any relationship. And it gives me the idea that she really isn't ready for a relationship herself and is just putting that onto others. She's not willing to take any of the blame. She's always deflecting. And I get that feel on the next song, Too Deep, where she talks about having a main thing and a side thing. And it's possible that they're in an open polygamous relationship, which to each their own. But then she starts complaining about things getting complicated and people getting angry and people sending frustrated text messages and a lack of communication. And if you're in a sexual relationship with multiple people at the same time, what do you expect, honestly? Is there a way to work it out? I'm sure there is, but I can see something like that just being complicated so easily that you really put this on yourself. I have no sympathy for anything she's going through on this song, because it isn't committed to either relationship, it seems, and then she's complaining about one getting upset over the other. And it's my goodness, what did you expect? And then you expect us to have sympathy for the things you're going through? That's just, it's really short-sighted, and it fails to take into account the greater picture of things. It's very she's looking at things with a tunnel vision, and it's really frustrating, if anything. And on the following song, Nunya, featuring Don Kennedy, where it's like, oh, and then she has this jealous ex who's always stalking her next relationships because apparently that he's just not over her or something. And it's really just grating when I hear these other two songs before where she comes across as being she treats her relationships poorly, she makes bad decisions, and then blames it on the other person, which, especially to a lot of people, I don't care what gender you are, to a lot of people that can be really emotionally damaging. I mean, you can convince people that you're in the wrong, you're wrong, your feelings are wrong, everything you're doing is wrong, it's your fault. And it doesn't matter what gender you are, that people can convince themselves of that if they're told it enough times, regardless of what the situation is actually like. And it's a really frighteningly common thing that it seems like she's supporting, if anything, and I find that to be disturbing, unhealthy, and a very bad message to be carrying across. So on the song Nunya, I'm thinking, okay, you know what, maybe he should be stalking your exes to warn them of you. I mean, my goodness, I have no sympathy for any of the things she's going through. And then most of the other songs on here aren't as harmful as those ones, in my opinion, where she's constantly being told that she's right. She's constantly having these people tell her that, you know what, you were right, I was in the wrong. Where I think it could have been improved by maybe having some sort of counter argument to what she's saying, some sort of other perspective, being like, you're gonna put this blame on me? You're wrong too. You did this, you did that. And sure, I may have made a mistake, but don't think you're all high and mighty just because you're the one breaking up with me. And it's like, I think that would have made it a lot better and made some of these bland, uninteresting features a lot more compelling. Again, after all this, it's a lot less offensive. It's much more basic, uninteresting, hopeless romantic songwriting that fails to interest me whatsoever. Maybe it's just not my kind of thing, but to me it's done in an uninteresting, uninspired, and really bland way. I do have to admit, I did enjoy the song Morning Glory, though. I thought this one had a very funky, upbeat vibe, and it was fun to move with. And even though I don't think the lyrics, again, were all that well written, and I think her one rap verse where she has a Snoop Dogg flow for some reason is a bit out of place, I don't think it's all that bad, and I end up enjoying the song. She also gives one of her best vocal performances across the entire album, where she often feels uninspired and really just forcing emotion onto us. I actually feel some of the things she's saying. And even though it's not a very emotional song per se, it's effectively just about one-night stands and the things they imply in a relationship, it was still a fun song. It's the one highlight I have on this album, and I actually enjoy listening to it. But aside from that, everything on here is just underproduced, underwritten, and in a couple of cases really emotionally manipulative and harmful, both to the character she's playing in as far as the relationship goes, and I think emotionally manipulative to the listeners too, because she wants us to feel sympathy for her when we don't have the full situation and we really don't know everything. And I think having multiple perspectives to let the audience have a wider view of things would have improved this album greatly. I think it would have made it a much more compelling, interesting, and thought-provoking listen, where you don't necessarily have to take one side or the other, but just hear the whole situation played out and understand that both people can be at fault in a relationship. It's not just one or the other. So with that being said, I'm feeling a light 3 on this album. If you gave it a listen, tell me what you thought about it. Make sure to tell me how wrong my opinion is, as always, and I will see you in the next review.